Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beltline to Broadway. I want y'all to get used to hearing that because next week our DU on stage will kind of phase out a little bit. I'm Lauren Van Hamer, and I'm very excited because I'm actually a guest tonight. I'm not running the show tonight. Renee Wimberley is running things. But I do want to ask you to please subscribe to our DU on Stage, press those like and emoji buttons or whatever you do on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching. And be sure to comment and ask your questions on whatever platform you're on during the evening so that we can have a dialogue, because this is going to be a really good conversation. So now I'm putting on my guest hat, and Renee, I'm turning it to you. Oh, wait, I can't hear you. You're muted. Hold on. Let me unmute you. That's my last. Okay.
There we go. All good. That's kind of the moral of the story. No, I'm very excited to be here. I do a lot of stuff with Cedar Chair, and we do immersive things and a lot of projects with grown-ups and with kids where we are in the audience's space. And so, but normally we're still live in front of an audience as well, like everybody else is. And so, like everybody else, we've all punted to this digital format. And I was talking to Byron not long ago, and the performers and theater makers, we've all had to figure out a new way to tell stories and a new way to do stuff. But for those of you guys that write about theater and write about performing arts, I can't imagine how bizarro this year has been for you guys as well. Just like we've all had to learn brand new skills, you've had to figure out different ways to tell stories about stories and in the work that you do. And so I thought it might be fun just to have a chat with some writers and folks that we know to see what their year has been like and how you guys have figured out how to reinvent yourselves in the work that you do and to make things happen. So before we go any further, Germana, Byron, you guys tell us about yourself. Germana, tell everybody who you are and what you do and who you're with.
Goodness. I'm Germana Sharp. I'm an actress and vocalist. And I also write for Chatham Life and Style. I'm a staff writer now. I think that's what our editor, I don't know, but I have that title. So I write for Chatham Life and Style and have been writing for them quite some time. So yeah, that's who I'm with in the area. Yeah, I don't really like to talk about myself. It's very weird. So go ahead, Byron, take it away.
Mr. Woods, are you with us? Oh, we're paused for a second. There you are. We'll get it back.
Okay. I'm experiencing interruptions in sound and interruptions in visuals. Are y'all out there and can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Here you know. Yep.
Okay, good things. Unfortunately I heard most of Germana's intro, but I have no idea if she finished or not. I'm not a bit of right.
You're good. So
okay.
Tell us who you are to those who do not know who you are and who you write for and have been writing for and all those things.
Okay, fine. My name is Byron Woods. I have been an arts journalist in this area now for 26 years. I started work at the News and Observer while I was still in grad school. In 2002, I defected to what was then called The Independent, now called Indy Week. I've been writing about theater and dance primarily in the region for 26 years. And that says much of that describes most of my activity for the last quarter century.
I've seen a whole lot of what goes on around here. Lauren, tell us a little more about you. You're relatively new to the area, not super new, but new-ish.
I am. I'm newish. I'm Lauren Van Hammer. I run RDU on Stage, which is becoming Beltline to Broadway next week. I started as I actually started as a journalist. I had my first talk show when I was 15 years old on public radio, WDNA Miami in Miami, Florida, where I'm from. But once I moved to North Carolina, I became a stay at home mom. I took care of my son um, until about 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I became the regional contributing editor for Broadway World Raleigh, started covering the theater locally, and 2 years ago, I started RDU on Stage and started freelancing for myself. So that's about the size of it. And Roy Dix and Byron have been so generous to um, mentor the emerging artists in this area. They both took me under their wing. Byron gave me the best advice ever. He said, persist. So I've been persisting ever since.
There you go. We all need that. It is the truth, especially in this past year. So until last year, I assume most of your writing then had been about live performances, correct? Had any of you written like reviews for film or internet projects or things like that prior to this, Germana?
Well, prior to during the pandemic or during quarantine last year, I did Black is King. So I did, I did a critique for that. Um, and I think that's probably the only film that I can recall doing. Um, but yeah, nothing else other than that. Just Black is King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Byron? Did you review a lot of film, like for the Indy and things like that?
Really, very rarely. I've done film reviews when they have intersected in my primary beats. When Wim Wenders did the amazing documentary about Pina Bausch, Pina. There was a release that was done in 3D. I did have that about the film, and there've been occasionally other projects that have intersected with dance as well as theater, but very until this year, very little. Just attempting to cover the live work in the region that has been for the last couple of decades more than enough to keep a body busy. So
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Lauren?
Never reviewed film, and really didn't want to. I like movies, but I didn't really feel qualified to review movies, nor did I ever feel qualified to review dance or visual art. So RDU on Stage, when we started, it was strictly to review live theatrical productions. So no film.
Sure. Because a lot of us performers and directors, we never this was not what we anticipated, that oh wait, now I'm going to make little movies, and which is pretty cool. I keep saying it's impressive that we've created a vaccine in this short a time. Our industry has learned an entirely different genre of performance and the work that we've all created, and I think that is to our credit, to our community's credit, and just globally. Yeah, Byron.
I had to learn an entirely different, an entirely different aesthetic, an entirely different tech, several layers of tech. I mean, not an enviable situation. You have a group of a constellation of theater artists. So we have technicians who are well versed in theatrical lighting, set design for live performance, and then there's the question of acting, acting for the stage as opposed to acting for the camera, macro gesture versus micro gestures. You have a very robust community of hundreds of practitioners in the region who have been doing this work for years, decades, ongoing. And then overnight, all of y'all are told, from this point forward, you have to make television, live television.
In your
something
laundry
along, something along exactly, something along the lines of Playhouse 90. And if you don't have a TV studio already at your disposal, and you haven't had years of training in how to produce live television, and you're not well versed in a film or a television aesthetic, what we do with a camera is so much different than what we do with directing for the stage.
Yeah.
Is so
We're losing you
doing
a
it,
little bit.
you just will not.
Byron, we're losing you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
He's frozen.
You're frozen a little. All right. Byron, see if you can
But
get back.
I'll piggyback on what he's saying. You know, for us at RDU on Stage, we pivoted. Oh, okay, Byron, you're back. So finish your train of thought.
Okay, friends, I'm sorry. I'm experiencing some tech glitch. I'm not sure what the deal is. Where did things freeze? Where was I?
Just that we had to create live television.
Indeed, the community of practice is forced to learn an entirely different art form, basically, with the penalty of, if you're not successful in transferring your live theatrical work into a live television format, your artwork just will not be experienced by anyone. You're just gonna disappear. You're gonna vanish. It's the working definition of an artist's nightmare, that literally overnight you must completely change aesthetic, tech, and do so in
Well, and I'll give you a second to
experience your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think too,
So
you know,
it's
you gotta do it
been,
in a set. What were you gonna say, Lauren?
You know, for me, and I have a little bit more freedom on my platform than I think perhaps Byron does at the Independent. When I started looking at what was happening, we made a pretty conscientious decision with our DU on Stage to not review productions for pretty much from March to recently. We've recently started reviewing productions again, but for me, I felt that the role of theater critic or arts journalist was changing a little bit, and I felt like our role was more of historian and documentarian, to document this moment and document how our creatives were reinventing the wheel, so to speak, rather than review theater. Because my feeling was that all of our theater makers were at an unfair advantage of having to really experiment with new technology under pretty awful circumstances. And so I didn't want to be reviewing it. I was seeing kind of production values all over the place, and I just didn't feel like everyone was quite on a level playing field with the technology. So for me, my pivot in covering theater was not to just stop, but to begin to look at it from a historical perspective, documenting what we were seeing in the community.
Sure. Germana, because you're obviously an actor as well, you're coming at it from both ends. When did you realize last year that you were going to that this wasn't going away? And how you were going to pivot?
Well, I was we were in the very beginning of a show at Bear Theater, and it's Marat and Saad.
Marat Saad, yeah.
Yeah, so we did the opening night, and that's it. So that's when I realized, like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be here for a while. And I had to, I think, pivoting to this type of I think I was kind of blessed because I had this stuff, because it kind of went around, it kind of went with the actor package, right? So you have these self-tape auditions, you have the background, you have your little corner spot in your room, you have the tripod, you have all of this stuff, and it's it's just because I'm sending a self-tape audition, I have to send this video or whatever. But the time that I spent increased. The time that I spent in front of the camera increased significantly. And I went from like having to do 50% in front of the camera doing my self-tape auditions to 100%. I did auditions, I did rehearsals, and I did the show in front of the camera. And I had to push myself to be creative with what I had around me. So character-wise, switching out wigs, using stuff in my house, decorating the backdrop to look like something, anything, I don't know. And and just, really having to play all of those parts, not just the actor. So that kind of, it kind of pushed me a little bit, because now I'm tech, I'm the actor, I'm like kind of the stage, I'm doing the stage set, I'm setting stages and stuff. So it kind of pushed me to do that, and I had to grow. I had to grow in that aspect. But yeah, I don't, to tell you the truth, it was, as we got more later into the year, and now that we're here where we're at now, it's become a little bit smoother, because this is the new normal. Once everything starts to open back up, I'm sure there's going to be another new normal, but this has become the stage. My home is the stage now. So it's just like, what do you want me to do? I can go to the living room. I can go to, like, I can go here. What do you need? I have toilet paper. I have, like, like, what do you need in the background? Like, I got a wig. Like, what do you want me to do? So it's definitely.
I love that we've done a show together and we've never met in real life.
Exactly. There you go.
Right.
Like, I've definitely interacted with a lot of different people, and I'm just like, man, I've never met you before. It's just like, I've never met you in real life, but we've acted together and we've done these awesome shows together. And I think that people who probably wouldn't have been able to see these shows live in person got the opportunity to actually witness certain things, like Black Girls Love the Bard, or the WTF festivals, or stuff like that. And it's just in, like, the piece that Tristan did with the James Baldwin piece, like, it was a beautiful piece. I never got to see that live, and when he did it virtually, it was like, I was amazed, I was taken back. And it's just like, you have those, it provided some opportunities, and it definitely gave me a new titles to put under my belt. So yeah, I think the pivot for me definitely was growing as a creative, and pushing myself to see what else I can do.
Yeah. Byron, to you, when everything shut down, what did things look like as far as okay, I review things. Now I don't review. What do I, when did you realize, okay, this isn't going away? And we're going to have to shift.
Well, there were, as the lockdown came into place, there were several productions that were going up in the area. I'm thinking about Shali Dance Works in Durham. She was right on the that was show week for Shali Comerford, her latest work. She saw the lockdown coming, and she tasked a couple of video producers, online video folks in her area, technicians, with getting them online, putting the show online. And one of the interesting things about that was that they were not only were they successful, able to actually do this, come up with a tech that got her performance live streamed within a week of her saying, "Let's go for it." Less than 1 week turnaround time for tech that's significant. It also, to the best of my knowledge, was the first live stream ticketed performance in the region, where tickets were sold with the notion of you are buying a ticket to see a live event, and they were able to put in security or to make it exclusive enough that if you didn't buy the ticket, you didn't see the show. So that was one significant and necessary on the tech side workaround that had to be in place. To the best of my knowledge,
skills right there. Like that's a whole bunch of stuff. I said that's like 10 different skills right there.
Truly. And to take this on and to pull it off with less than 1 week from, oh, we need to put it online, to, yeah, we're putting it online and we're charging admission, and we actually have a platform that's flotational enough to make it happen. So that was happening. Curtis Eller was trying to do a concert at that time that he wound up doing virtually. And the first thing that I wrote about the pandemic's influence on the arts focused on 2 or 3 shows that were happening right then and there that folks were working like mad trying to figure out a way how to save a production that you've already, and we all know the deal there. In terms of dance, the live arts, you put all of your costs up front because you're trying to put on a show, and you're hoping to get something on the back end from tickets, and then all of a sudden, hey, you're not going to be allowed to perform. People were scrambling like crazy. People with shows already ready to go up. They were scrambling like mad to find some way to get something of it out. So, in terms of hitting the ground running, that was the first few stories. The first couple of stories about that were happening as the clampdown was taking place. It was a time with a lot of desperate innovation, I guess is the phrase I would use, Renee. And you ask when did I know that we were no longer in Kansas, in a manner of speaking. There's a very personal response here was not only in this time period, again, just 5 steps back in the big picture. In this period of time, theater and dance, live performance, music, theater, and dance, these were all basically put into eclipse in the space of 2 to 3 weeks, less than that actually. The time frame is very short. I have to tell you, if I'm trying to tell the story of the time, and you're asking me when did I know this is a sea change and we aren't going back to where we were earlier. On a very personal note, the newspaper, the Indy. I've been writing for the Independent, for Indy Week since 2002, and this part, it's not telling tales out of school. Both our editor-in-chief at the time, and our publisher, they both made forward-facing statements, public-facing statements, in which they said, "Okay, here's the deal. most of our advertisers, the overwhelming majority of our advertisers for the Indy, are folks in live culture, restaurants, bars, music presenters, arts presenters in the region. When all of them went dark, we lost the overwhelming majority, almost all of our advertising revenue. Again, this is not a mystery. The paper's management said so. We told the readers that we were in a place where we were losing basically most of our ad revenue, and I was furloughed for a month and a half. The paper was publishing every other week for a time. I just letting just to in terms of bearing witness about the time, the live arts were definitely threatened in a way that they have never been threatened. Not in my time on the beat, 20, 30 years experiencing art in this region. I have to also tell you that arts journalism in the region was fundamentally threatened, was put almost in the same eclipse, just about, as the art forms being covered. We came closer than I ever want to be, as not only as an arts journalist, but someone who consumes art journalism, who relies on it for significant information about the world that I want to live in. We came closer than I would ever want to be to seeing that go away. And the times are still pretty tight. Things are better now, but all one has to do is to count the number of pages in the newspaper these days versus the pages in the paper when I started working there in the early 2000s, or in the 2000 teens, early 2000 teens. We're still in a place where arts journalism is endangered. The work that's being done is a fraction of the work that we have had the resources to apply to it in the past, and that's showing up in the amount of work, the length of the work, the amount of page space that we have to speak to what's going on. It's still a very uncomfortable. If you want to know the truth, it's still a very uncomfortable moment to be an arts journalist, and there's still this feeling of holding our breath and mixing metaphors here, holding our breath and trying to whistle as we're walking by a very, very, very long graveyard. If that mixed metaphor gives you anything.
And I think too, I remember last April I was doing a reading for WTF, and hey Joanna, she's out there. I remember texting a girlfriend of mine because it was the first time that I had done a reading. I'd seen a lot of the readings that had been done. WTF was like all over it. And there were so many cool pieces, and a lot of theaters were doing, really, really neat, just as an opportunity to get us out there. And that was very cool. And I was,
bless the WTF, man. Yeah, but Renee, I'm interrupting you. I'll go on in a second, but please carry on.
Yeah. And they were, gave us opportunities to read scripts and I remember I got to play Byron Jennings' mom, which was like a dream. And so I'm just saying, everybody has a dream role, and I just want to be Byron Jennings' mom every day. But I was texting a girlfriend of mine, and I said, if this continues, I could have just won Best Supporting Actress in a Zoom play. And because I thought that was hilarious, because that's never going to be a thing. But you know what? Who'd have thunk in 2001 that reality TV would now be an Emmy category, and that now there would be more than one Emmy category for reality TV? This may not go away. So what do you think? Byron, say what you're going to say.
Yeah, bless the Women's Theater Festival. Another indication. You're asking for bellwethers of we are no longer in Kansas, or the norm, the status is no longer quo. Listen, they, in terms of hitting the ground running, their attempts to stage live, do live stream staged readings of work by by prominent women playwrights, new work by women's playwrights, when they are reaching out to people like Lauren Gunderson, and folks like them are responding back to them, giving them permission to do live streaming readings of new works. Bless them. They never said die. They were plowing forward, looking for any way to take the work forward. And given the time and the response Gunderson was hardly the only one. A number of major playwrights of our time not only agreed to let them live stream stage readings of their work, the authors themselves sat in on chats with the audience afterwards. Women's Theater Festival was the only game in town to some degree in those early weeks. One of the very few games apparently happening in North America, apparently, because these authors, they stay busy, but all of a sudden nobody's producing anybody's works. Everything's dark. You've got one group out there just intrepid saying, hell or high water, we're going to do a staged reading, and the buy-in they got from some of the major names of our time. That's phenomenal. And they went forward, and they went forward. The production that they did of Gunderson, that the production that they did of Natural Shocks, the one-person show, given what we saw on the screen, truly the work of this year, if we're talking aesthetics, much of the entire community of practice has had to learning to crawl in terms of learning to take on an entirely different aesthetic, a different tech, and try to make their artistic visions, change those artistic visions, transmute them so that they fit in an entirely different aesthetic than the one they're used to. With Natural Shocks, a one-woman show about a person who is hiding in a basement as a disaster, natural disaster, unnatural disaster, is unfolding above her head, literally over her head. Given what was going on with that production, the tech for that production, it made it look like we were watching a woman try to get a signal out on her cell phone. It was like we were looking in on our cell phones at someone trying to get a message out, signal for help, asking for help out of hers. It was riveting. So when I was doing the due diligence for that show, I read the reviews from the initial New York production, and they were fair to middling reviews. The thread that I got from the writings was that the lack of intimacy in a conventional stage space in a large theater with a base room set and a woman who's crouching in one corner, that much space really didn't help that show at all. We never got over the problem of what are we doing in this woman's basement, listening to what's going on. But if you take that story and you put it in the context of you're looking at a picture on a cell phone, and the person's on their cell phone, and they're trying to say something is really going wrong here, and it's just off, and it's coming down around me. That was the kiss of life for that show. That was. I know that there were a couple of technical glitches, but dude, that was probably the optimal production, or one of the most optimal productions of that script, because we had the intimacy, we had the threat being conveyed, and it read like a person trying to send an SOS out on their cell phone while the world is crashing in on top of them. So, I mean, much of the year has involved trying to learn new tech, but we got there were triumphs in that time period, and I'm still grateful for them. So, let me say that much.
And Adrian Pender's piece that we got to do with Germana, that one of the exciting things about that project was it couldn't be produced anywhere else. I mean, it couldn't be produced live. Like, I don't want to see any of those plays live. The whole point of it is that they're not, and that we're watching Germana this close, and feeling every feel and all of those things. And, that's one of my favorite things. That's one of my favorite pieces we've ever done. And it was beautifully directed and acted.
There are some,
when
there were some pieces, and still are some pieces that you see that have been made specifically for your screen.
Mhm.
And I think that is like, and I know for a fact these writers and these producers, they don't even think about it they just do it without a beat. Like, it's just, I'm doing this for the screen. And it's kind of like, and I would even go far to say that it's fun for them. That's what their mind is for. That's what their creative mind is for. I could put it on the stage and it'll read well, but I could definitely put it on the screen and I know that it would read well to people looking in their cell phone or on their TV.
Yeah, the intimacy, that
Mhm.
intimacy of just,
Right.
you are there wherever there is, and the
Right.
person's coming at you at point blank range, and just, going, okay, things are really kind of happening here. It so reinforces the drama.
Right.
We really have this tech has such potential. And we're scratching a lot of good surfaces here. But forgive me, Jerome, I
No,
interrupted you. I didn't mean.
You're fine, because I definitely agree with it. It gives you, just like Adrian's piece, it kind of like, it reminds me of Blair Witch Project, when it was just like,
Which was like
90% of the movie was them this close to the camera and trying to get help and just panicking, and you're just like, oh my God, like that stuff is definitely that stuff is definitely interesting to a viewer. That's something that is very, very like intriguing to a viewer. Like, what is going to happen next? Like, what is going on? And it's so much, it's intriguing because it's like, I want that to be me. I know that could never be me. Oh my goodness. And it's it's just like the fact that we are damn near close to it, what I'm saying? Like, we're, especially with the piece that I did, it's just like, wow, like it hits home, and it's just something that you can just really dig into. And when I was writing reviews for other shows, I omitted any technical fouls that I saw, or any technical difficulties, because I understood. I understood what we were all working with, and I understood that for the most part, this is the first time that most of the crew and tech people are having to navigate through this new system. It's fine. So, I can't hear you, Renee.
Renee, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
I don't
Renee,
know
I
why
can't
we
hear you at all.
No. Oh,
Not yet.
We can't hear you.
All right. Talk
Oh.
amongst.
Oh,
There you go.
Now
Yeah.
I did nothing. That's never a good sign. Except the point of my story. So we're still at the mercy of the internet, right? And so it's like, Lauren,
Obviously.
that, we're now not on even ground, right? It's like, who knows OBS best, and who's got a better rig than I do, and who doesn't have a stupid pin light because the light's not working right now, and all of those things. So when it comes down to writing, because again, I personally don't believe this is going to go away as a form, and I don't really want it to. I think we've realized that we've created something new and different and beautiful. I don't believe Zoom is ever going to replace live theater, but I personally think it's a pretty groovy both and. Because that means then you guys have to review it, right? So what, we want you to, we like your feedback. We want your feedback. So what then are the things that do translate if we're not going to just talk about the glitch? Is it, what are the things that you feel as writers and as arts journalists do transcend, as far as your comments are concerned, Lauren?
I think, one observation I've had over the last year is the relationship. I'm not going to speak for Byron because he's like, he's perpetually 29 years old. Just look at him. He looks fabulous. But I'm old. I'm going to say I'm old. And being from the old school journalism, we always were taught that journalists are kind of the objective observer. We're not part of the community. We don't have too much of a relationship with it. We have a little bit of a relationship with the community, but we're not embedded in the community in such a way that it would compromise our objectivity. And with this pandemic, I found that not only did I become embedded in the community, but the relationship with the community suddenly changed. And this is what I'm going to say to all of you. I went from, Byron and I having coffee at Krispy Kreme, debriefing after a play, and it was a pretty private conversation, to all of you being in my business.
Right. And
that's not a bad thing, but as that's happened, I think the arts journalist role also changes. And the doors become open, the accessibility becomes open. Germano, were you writing reviews before the pandemic, or is this like a new platform for you?
I was definitely I was writing reviews, but it was very new. I was not like, nah, I wasn't even thinking about, that was like furthest thing from my mind to write, to review, critique anything. And I'm big as an entertainer. I was big on critiques. Like the critiques, this is just my opinion, but the critiques kind of made me, it kind of smoothed me out a bit. But no, I was not, I never even had an inkling of trying to like, oh yeah, I could be, let's see what this is all about, journalism, and none of that. None of it. No. I never, because I didn't think, I don't know. I just didn't think I was like, I didn't have that as a journalist. I could write, I could probably write, I could write a play or whatever, but as a journalist, no. So I was doing a little tiny bit, just a tiny bit. And then.
And what's so interesting to me is platforms like, I can speak for RDU on Stage. I can speak a little bit for Dustin, Chatham Life and Style, because he and I have had conversations about this. We've kind of banged our heads against a wall looking for writers. And I think because this pandemic has maybe created a little bit of an equal playing field, that we are all of a sudden attracting, especially Dustin. Dustin is like, he's going to recruit every writer in town. But I feel like it's opening the doors to more writers. So Byron, I am less concerned about the world of arts journalism, because I see the dynamic shifting from what you and I are used to as, again, you're 29, I'm a bit older, but what I learned in school as what arts journalism is, or what journalism is, the tides are shifting. And I guess it's up to us as old school journalists to shift with that tide and develop those relationships, or not. And so that's where I think the trends are changing. I don't know. Byron, in on that. You work for a traditional paper. versus my platform or Chatham Life and Style, which is more blog.
Yes.
Lauren, okay, so I can see that, but I really think that the integrity of a journalist has to be intact. You have to know what you're talking about. And I get what you're saying. Like everybody now it shouldn't be, it shouldn't be a level playing field because I'm not a journalist. You see what I'm saying? Like I shouldn't, and I don't have the years of experience that you guys have. You know what it takes to be a respected journalist. You know what I mean? And you know what it takes to have that respect in your words when you are writing about someone's work. I have known and I have seen nowadays that people write stuff just to be writing it. Like, what are you talking about? What is it that you what where did we go? Like what is we're left? Now I need you to straighten up. So that's why when you ask me, have I been writing? No, I have not been writing. This is the first time that I have actually in Chatham Life and Style actually opened up other writing doors for me because now I write for B and Brown LLC and I write for Broadway Black. So that took time though because I had to learn. I wasn't just writing. So I'm trying not to be offensive, but I think I'm gonna just go off the cuff. Everybody should not be, you guys have your level. I respect journalism. I respect the writer. It's just like a food critic. Like I could go to Burger King and be like, yeah, these burgers are way better than McDonald's. But it's not the same. You know, it's not the same.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do you think some of that, because I'm old too, do you think some of that is the fact that everybody is now a writer because of Facebook? And
Renee.
what?
Yes, Renee.
But
Okay,
you know what
Renee,
I'm
we
saying?
might
I
be
mean,
Renee.
I will high five you across the
Yes,
screen on
yes,
one
yes.
side of the screen yard. No,
Everybody
but
has an opinion.
everybody has an opinion, and we've all been sitting in opinions, and it is different, and it should be. I hear what you're saying. I think it's cool that you're coming about as a writer in this season, though, and being able to see what has to look different and set you apart as not just having an opinion.
Right. And I think that my experience as an act, like I'm in this field. So I know what to look for. You see what I'm saying? I know how to critique something and it's never personal. It's always about the art. It's always about the integrity. It's keeping the respect of that. And I think a lot of people lose that because they think they don't think honestly. They don't think about when you write something, it should be just as powerful as the art that you have viewed or that you're writing about. Like words like for somebody who's never seen the show, if they read your critique first before they go see the show, they pretty much have built their whole they pretty much judging. They're already going into the show judging what they're going to see. Now, it could be something that wasn't your favorite. That's fine. It could be something that was your absolute favorite, but it's always about what was it about the art? That's what it is for me. So when I see things virtually, I'm always looking at the acting aspect of it because I know that's all there is as far as the actors go. They are just they're acting and they really can't do too much with the space they have. So I'm looking at it and I'm looking at how they dive into that script, whether it's a stage reading or it's off book, whatever. I'm looking at the acting and I'm looking at how it was translated. Once again, I go back to Tristan Parks, like when he did the James Baldwin piece. I know it was breathtaking. I know it was moving live, but it was just as moving when I seen it virtually.
So
and that's what I pay attention to. So yeah, like he like that is a good example of, I seen everything else that was behind him and all of that and blah 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 blah, but his acting transformed through the screen, and it took me somewhere. So that's what I pay attention to. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah,
it does. So that said, because I assume in reviews, Byron, you've done this for a while, even at 29. When you're critiquing a dance piece or you're critiquing live theater, you're critiquing blah blah scenery and lights and tech elements of a live performance, right? I mean, historically,
Yes.
right?
Renee, your signal broke up for just a second.
Oh, no.
I think you were just asking me if I have been traditionally reviewing live performance. If there was another part of the question, please re-ask it.
Right. So when you are, when you have reviewed live performance in the past, you also include technical elements, design, all of that as part of your live theater reviews, right?
Indeed. Yes.
So now going forward, knowing that this is the new normal, this is not, I don't believe it's going away. I could be completely wrong. I don't want, like I said, I don't want it to go away. I want it both and. I'm ready to be in a theater again, or in my case, on a street or wherever, Seed's making a weird play. But I think now, what do you guys, my question for y'all is, now what do you have to learn? Like, if you are going to say, okay, this is not going anywhere, so I want to be able to review this, internet's be damned, how am I going to really communicate that and give a fair review when I'm still at the mercy of bandwidth? There's still an accessibility piece of, I say I teach, and half of the drama kids in Wake County have seen my laundry at this point because I can't, because that's just where we live, right? And there's 6 people fighting for the internet in my house right now, and a dog. So how are you, like, what do you do to say what's it going to look like when it's done really, really well? And
well, this is the question. This is one of a lovely bouquet of questions that I've had to wrestle with, again, to mix the metaphor, over the last year. I am writing for the record. I am a journalist, and when I'm doing a review for my newspaper, I do have to bear witness, and part of the witness that I'm bearing is, if a technical element is messing with the performance, influencing it, or to the other hand, if it's doing something fantastic, for example, Natural Shocks, the Women's Theater Festival production back early last year. I do have to report that, and again, by way of context here, I am obliged to report what I saw, and what I heard, and that testimony probably is not going to come as a great surprise. It shouldn't come as a surprise at all to anyone who saw the show. If I saw a technical glitch, pretty much that's what was coming in the other side. And indeed, when I have written about productions that have been virtually based, put online, I'm thinking about Freak Show, the main stage production that Women's Theater Festival did. Some technical elements of that really were advantageous. Other times, the company, the Women's Theater Festival, is certainly not the only company this year that has. We use the phrase "fighting the room." In the theater, if something is so going off the rails that it's messing with the show, I couldn't be more sympathetic to it, but I do have to report it. I think I've been pretty sympathetic. I think I've communicated these problems when they come up, and try to provide the context of, okay, everybody, please realize what these folks are trying to do is incredibly difficult. Everything has to go right technically on several levels. And when it doesn't, then we're kind of, what's happening right now, hold up for a second. I'm having to kill my speaker because I'm getting feedback, like a 2-second delay feedback. So I'm making my speaker go away so I can actually communicate what I'm trying to say without an echo 2 seconds backwards behind me. I've tried to communicate the context that, yes, what these folks are doing is incredibly difficult. Sometimes it's working out. Other times, problems have messed with the quality of the performance. So that is what I have attempted to do at this point. In the times that I have been able to bear witness, again, the paper is doing a fraction of the coverage that we've done in the past. So again, the economics as well as the tech are influencing the material coming up. I've been listening to Lauren. I've been listening to Germana as well. I've been in, and I've been both of these things. I've been embedded. I was in theater and dance for about 10 years before I started writing about it in the first place. I've performed on stage. I've directed, designed, written for the stage. And then I got the chance, after I did my master's, to bear witness, to write about it. I'm a journalist, not just a critic. I have been, from the start of my practice, I've been writing features and news stories. So my relationship with the community of practice is closer than that of most critics. I've been interviewing and getting to know the performers and the playwrights and the directors.
Uh-oh.
We lost you for a second, Byron.
Okay, am I back now?
Yes, yeah. You're back.
Okay, good. I've been closer to this community of practice than a traditional critic because I've been writing news stories, feature stories about them since year one. So it's an interesting combination of things. I'm embedded, and yet I still have to bring some critical eye, hopefully informed by my academic work, my master's in performance studies, my own time in the theater. That informs what I'm doing. But at any rate, I find myself looking through several lenses simultaneously, if I'm being honest, at the work that I see, and I'm trying to bear witness with compassion.
Sure.
Just having been on that stage, knowing exactly what kind of investment it takes to stand up on a stage by yourself and do a one-person show for 45 minutes. I've actually done that any number of times, way back at the beginning of my career. I'm certainly more informed in terms of the gut check and what it takes to do. I try to do the work with compassion, but I'm also obliged to bear the witness as best I can. So it's a combination of things happening at the same time. I love the theater. I am a theater person, and I am tasked with bearing witness to the best of my ability.
Lauren. Can you hear me, Lauren?
Yes. Are you asking? Are you asking
on you?
Are you calling on me, Miss Wimberley? This is very strange for me. I have to tell you, to be a guest on my own. This is like a very surreal thing.
I like talking to grown-ups because nobody's bouncing on a yoga ball or eating bacon or playing with their dog. So
yeah, for me, as I've watched some virtual productions, over the last year, and I will be very open and honest, I did not love the virtual realm. I did not love a lot of what I was seeing. I was wrestling with the fact that I was really missing live theater, and that I felt like some companies were really trying to use technology to cover up a variety of sins. And what I found, what for me, the virtual productions that began to work the best were the ones where the technology became very similar to costume, to lighting. It just became another tool to advance the story. When the technology was getting in the way of the story and companies were starting to put too many special effects or too many things to veer away from what live theater does,
Right.
I was finding myself going, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Rein it in and use and to my complete excitement, that's beginning to happen now. I'm seeing more and more productions that are really figuring out ways to use the technology in a way that advances stories, just like they would costume or lighting or any other design element. They're just going, this is just another facet of our toolkit. And that's when it
Yes.
works the best.
Yep.
I think it's cool that, we were not alive when people started dressing up in costumes for the first time, or when they realized they could make sound happen with recordings. And here we are at the beginning of this whole new hybrid weirdo genre that we're embracing. And so we're watching it. Technology is evolving in front of our faces. And I was watching a video. It was a one of the first ones that I was in where there were lots of different people singing at the same time, or that kind of thing. And seeing the technology from March a year ago to what we know now, it's like, it's a whole new bucket of stuff that we now learned how to do in a year, which is still crazy to me. But technology is going to continue to move. Some of those pieces that we saw in last year, they would be entirely different now because of the skills that we all know. Who had Zoom on your phone last year? Not me to start with.
Yep. Sure did.
And Renee, I will say one of the most exciting productions I saw, and this was the turning point for me, was the Irish rep production of Meet Me in St. Louis. Um, it was the first time. There were things about it that didn't work, but the way they incorporated technology, they had costumes, they had lighting, they put their performers who were in all different locations in front of green screens, and they actually had a set designer who designed a virtual set. And so it looked like these actors were sitting in the same parlor at the same table. And I began to think, okay, there's a hopefulness here that I can really get behind. Plus, they had an overture and a real orchestra, and it made my eyes just want to well up because I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. This is good from where we were in those early days of March when people were just kind of reinventing the wheel.
It's like
Yeah.
we were baby deers walking for the first time. Like, I'm sure there's a name for a baby deer, but I don't know it. But it's like we were baby deers walking for the first time, and then we straightened up. And the turnaround time was like 6 months to a year. And I always said, like, this is not to be, not to be offensive or anything. This is not 1995. We've always had the advanced technology to do whatever. We've seen it, even before the pandemic. We've seen amazing angles and lights, and the technology is there. Most of us ain't got the budget. So we have to do what we can with what we got. And that's exactly what we did. Um, I've seen some productions where, they're in the theater and they have all of their tech and everything, and they're shooting the stage, like the actors are on stage, and of course nobody's in the audience, but they set the stage up, like they have everything going, and it's just amazing. It's like you're watching a movie. It's like you're watching a TV show at home, and it's live theater. So I believe that we've always had ways to do it, but no one thought that we would be in the middle of a pandemic, and that would force us to almost overnight change absolutely everything we knew, everything we did, and had to readjust forcefully and quickly.
Sure.
So
Bar.
Yeah, no, the tech is these techniques, these innovations in tech, they're going to stick around. Give artists new tools, new toys to play with. If they help artists tell stories, they're going to stick around. The I guess one of the main takeaways I've got is this: this community of practice. It has been an honor to attempt to cover them and to bear witness. Um, they, this community of practice innovates and keeps innovating. Renee, I'm thinking about an earlier project, I believe, from your group, Sue Scarborough. I'm blanking on the name of it, but a play directed in a car. In which the performance takes place in an automobile to an audience of, I don't know, 1, 2,
Whoever
possibly
could whoever could fit in my car that day was pretty much
exactly.
how that went. 10-hour drive, another one of my favorite people.
Yeah, this community innovates, and one of the takeaways I've got at this point is, in terms of the tech and the notion of this hybrid genre that is part, or at least can be live, can be television, can be mediated by way of cell phone. The for me the biggest contribution that the tech makes is when it reinforces intimacy, when it brings us closer to the people, the world, situation. One of the things about theater always is this distance, this, the fourth wall. My heavens, more than enough has been written about it. I think distancing is so last decade, last century, if I want to be honest about it. One of the things that I think is truly radical about the shift in tech and the shift in aesthetic is that the new tech does give us a moment. It gives us the chance to get closer to each other, to each other's situations, to each other's lives. And to the degree that the tech lets us as humans, as audience members as well as humans, draw closer to one another, to the people whose stories we're trying to get out in terms of the theater. That's what the goal is. And I've seen enough examples of it over the year that I'm very optimistic. I'm very hopeful that that can be expanded on, further developed. It can just take. I know it can take us places that we haven't even thought of yet. And I'm up for the trip. I'm really up for finding out what it can do.
Yeah, and I think with all of that, because I really don't consider myself to be a journalist. I just say I write and I critique and things. I think the journalist title should go to actual people who put the work in. But with that, and knowing that this isn't going anywhere, even when we get back to getting back into theaters and things like that, taking the time to actually critique things and review things respectfully and with compassion, like Byron said, understanding that, you know, this is a new type of, we're pivoting and this is a new type of realm for us. It's definitely going to open the doors, just to piggyback off of what Lauren said, for more writers to, for actual writers to come out and actually, you know, expand on this new thing. So
don't sell yourself short.
Say that again.
Don't sell yourself short.
Thank you.
I'm just saying.
But yeah, I honestly, you know, it opened my eyes to different things that I never would have thought about when I'm on stage acting, or things that I never would have looked at. Like I never would have paid any attention to, but I pushed myself, and Dustin was a tremendous help and still is a tremendous help with describing, explaining, making sure that I get my point across, and keeping that integrity of the art. That's what it's all about for me. I don't care if we are on a cell phone, if we're on stage, if we in the middle of the street. It's about the integrity, because you could act in front of me like on top of a trash can, and if it just blows me away, I would tell you, like, we got to do that again. Like, you have to cash in on that. So that's what I like about it, the integrity of the art.
Lauren?
The other really interesting thing that has happened, at least I'm going to speak to RDU on stage, is, and it occurred to me on election night. You know, when I started RDU on stage, I'm going to go to a play, whether it is at Fletcher Park, and I'm going to see The Miracle Worker in a site-specific production, or whether I'm going to go see Timon in Athens, or whether I'm going to go see whatever. I'm pretty much bound to Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. Occasionally, I venture out to Fayetteville, but this is my place. And on election night, throughout the pandemic, I have become friends with some Broadway makers. They're not actors, they're just makers, and crafters. They create some really interesting art. And one of those makers runs a company called Coloring Broadway out of Seattle. And she designs these coloring pages inspired by musical theater. And there's a whole mindfulness thing attached to it. So I called her up the night or two before the election, and I said, I do not want to be glued to my television on election night, because being the journalist, I can tell you, we're not going to know who won tonight. So sitting there and watching it is only going to upset me. I need to be distracted. So let's color together on Zoom and have a virtual coloring party, and, you know, just hang out with our friends. So we had theater lovers from across the country hop on to that election night coloring party that RDU on stage hosted. And 3 days later, Broadway World in Cleveland wrote about RDU on stage and how innovative we were in hosting a coloring party on election. And I started getting these crazy questions as to, what does RDU stand for? So for me as a journalist, all of a sudden my work went from being I'm going to go to Theater Raleigh. I'm going to cover their show. Byron and I are going to go for coffee after Burning Coal's production, and we're going to debrief a little bit and talk about that show. It went from me being in my little bubble here in Raleigh to me being on this and not just me, but other journalists I know being on a much bigger platform. That is why we are rebranding, because I'm sick of answering questions as to what RDU stands for. We are rebranding. We're going to become Beltline to the Broadway. And as you see that, you'll know why, because Broadway World Cleveland keeps writing about us, and I keep getting questions as to what RDU stands. We've now hosted 3 co-hosts, and every time we do, we're in Broadway World Cleveland. So thank you, Broadway World Cleveland. Now we'll be Beltline to Broadway, and hopefully no one else will be confused.
You got fans. That's great.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah, as journalists, as arts critics, we typically don't have fans, Byron. We typically have people wanting to kill us. So it's nice to have fans.
I think that's another thing.
Stalkers, yes. Fans, not so much.
This virtual world has introduced us to, because now people have no choice but to be on their phone or but to be on the internet, to be at TV. Like Renee said, I've never met Renee in real life, but we've acted together, we've worked together, and that's the same thing with Broadway Black. Like, Drew read something that I wrote for Being Brown LLC. I didn't when I wrote it, I didn't think like, oh, I'm gonna send this to New York, and I'm gonna send this to LA, and I didn't think that. I just wrote it because I felt it. And then I was like, here you go, here's my blog, here's my blog entry. And then that's it. And that opportunity to write for Broadway Black, just it really meant so much for me, because I've listened to the podcast. I looked at Broadway Black for years, and I never thought in a million years like I could write for them. Like, I never thought I could, or I just was like, I'm a big fan. That's all it was. I admire them. I admire what they're doing for the Black people who are on Broadway. I admire how they, hone in on the Black creatives. And that's all I just admired it. And just like with you, Lauren, like a coloring book, like we're just going to color so we can take our minds off of this crazy election. We're not going to do this. And that's, you didn't go into it thinking these people up in Cleveland, they're going to say that we're innovators, because it is like, that's the opportunity that this virtual world has provided. Because I know now that people who may have never heard of Durham or Raleigh in North Carolina, or people who may have never heard of these small towns or these small town talents can now connect. And that's cool. Awesome. I think that's totally awesome.
Yeah.
The blessing and the curse have walked hand in hand this entire year. I mean, just 5 steps back, big picture, y'all, we're on a planet where, several million people aren't walking at this time that were walking a year ago, right? So, I mean, respect is due, and must be paid, I think. But friends, if you were able to keep going at all in theater, in dance, in the months immediately after the lockdown, you were among a very, very small group of people. You had the ability. We had the ability to send our signal out much further than it would have otherwise gone. When the lights were going out everywhere, if you figured out a way to keep your light lit as an artist, and give people on the online access to it, y'all, the light got out a lot further. The theater itself is a small community anyway. It's a small town anyway, and this just kind of this kind of reinforced or showed us how small that town is, in a way that provided, I think, a necessary correction in terms of perception about. We all know the drill. New York, the center of the universe. Chicago, the second city in terms of theater, in terms of a number of things, right? That kind of deal. If you are able to keep going, right? There were a number of different areas, a number of different communities get visibility in a way that they didn't have beforehand. And part of that also involves who's bearing the witness. Lauren made the point earlier, and you just bore very eloquent testimony for it. I always knew from early on in the writing that the advent of the internet still is providing a golden moment where the conversation about the live arts can exponentially expand. So many more voices can be heard talking about the art form that we all love. It moves me deeply. It's something I've been waiting for from the earliest days of my practice. The other voices to come in, the other voices to find a way to get in and out, and out through the tech, through the blogs, through the various portals. I feel so less alone now that there are so many more voices bearing witness. We need the voices. We need more voices. More voices that aren't white, male, old dudes like myself, that kind of a deal. The chorus of voices is so richer now, and so much more diverse, and just so much more robust, because there's so many more people finding ways to bring the voices out and bring them forward. I've been waiting for it forever. I'm glad I've lived long enough to hear them and see them. We are at the beginning of something radically different than what we have seen in terms of art reporting, in terms of bearing public witness, in terms of the public conversation about the arts. It is a conversation, and that conversation is now expanding in so many different directions, becoming so much richer. I've done my best to contribute what I can to it. I'm still in the game. I'm still into contributing for it. I'm just so grateful to be hearing. The folks that I knew are out there.
I am
just wanted to say that.
One of my favorite writers for that is part of what you guys do, and again, we are so grateful, is Little Emery Caston. And as somebody who makes kids plays and who teaches babies, the fact that Chatham Life and Style said, why don't we ask a kid what they think, is like, duh, because duh. So I love the work that he and Rachel are doing, and Emery's one of our students, and we didn't teach him anything. He's just fun.
Yeah.
And I love to read when I find out that we got an Emery review for one of the kids shows. That's exciting, because it matters what the kiddos think. So
listen,
I like that.
I want a point that I want to make here. Whenever I teach criticism, and I do teach theater criticism, how to do it. It's a point that I always make. You put 10 people looking at the same show in the same room. Each one of them will see at least one thing that the other 9 didn't. Everyone brings something into the conversation that no one else was able to bring in. We are all irreplaceable as witnesses. Whether we've got the master's degree, the PhD that I don't have, that I'm never going to get, or what have you, the fact that you were in the room and you were paying attention, you saw, I'll put money down on it, at least one thing that the other folk that the other folks in the Matrix didn't see. And if you don't bring that forward, we won't know what it was. The witness is irreplaceable, and we need more witnesses. We need more witnesses, and more witnesses empowered to speak up about what they saw, because everyone does. Everyone sees something, and they all see it a little differently. And if we don't get that story out, then we don't get to learn from that. So just putting that out there.
Lauren?
And I think what's so great about Emery, and he's one of my favorite theater critics too, and not just Emery, but Grace. I don't know if any of you have read Grace's reviews on RDU on Stage, but she's older. She's a little older than Emery. She's 15 now. She's taking an AP course load, so she hasn't written quite as much for us because she's a high school student. But her reviews were getting far more readership than my reviews were, or than Kim's reviews were on RDU on Stage. And when I really thought about it, the thing that's so great about Emery and writers like Grace writing is all of a sudden we're letting theater belong to them, because there's been for such a long time, we've been so afraid that theater's going to die because the young people aren't coming to theater. But when we give the young people a voice and we say your opinion matters, then they take ownership of what they're seeing. And so that is what is so beautiful about Emery, writers like Grace. I know there's other, Sarah Block, Sarah Bach had come to me and she wanted to do some interviews. And so she did some interviews for RDU on Stage. We have to share the wealth a little bit with our young people so they will keep the theater going after we're gone.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
y'all.
The kids
go ahead.
For Renee that did the Wizard of Oz, like they were just so witty and spunky and just on beat and just uplifting. I enjoy watching them because they bring that real innocence and they bring that essence of the role to it, and you can tell that they actually like doing it. They actually like doing it. And I know I'm a theater kid. I was in chorus my whole life, and I was in drama. I was in drama throughout high school, chorus and drama, so I know how it goes. I know the behind the scenes stuff. We're not going to talk about that. But when you get on stage, and you see them just really just put everything in it, and it's like effortless. It's just so good. I really, really, really enjoyed that. So I wanted to tell you that too. I really enjoyed that when I saw you guys show. But
and that's the dance of Zoom. What is backstage is now suddenly on camera.
Oh, right.
There's no way. So they, they were tricked. So guys, we've gone like an hour and a half. Is there anything else? I want to say good luck, because just like we're going to relearn and we're going to come up with new stuff to do, you guys are going to have to learn all the new tech snazzy stuff and know what to look for. But again, I do still think it comes down to, are you telling the story, and is your technology supporting your story or detracting from your story?
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Renee, but you know what I thought was funny? Like I was just saying this to a friend of mine, like tech used to be at the end of the show, right? We always was like, okay, this is tech week, so we know the show about to start. This is the end of rehearsal. Now tech is overall. Like
you are right.
Tech is from the beginning to the end. So I find that pretty interesting, and it really opened my eyes to how important. I knew that the crew set and stuff was important, but it really opened my eyes to how important these guys were, and just the work that they do is very appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else, Byron? You want to close it out?
I think I've said my piece. Thank you. Thanks for the chance for the conversation. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. Lauren?
Thanks, Renee, for coming up with the idea. I love this conversation.
Yeah, we're just grateful for you guys, and thanks for all that you do in educating our community, keeping us together, and you are a part of our community. And again,
Right.
like you said, that's happened because that's had to happen. And whether it's been through, the amazing work that Lauren, that you and Juan have done this summer with Torn, those are, you saw a need, and you guys stepped in and said, okay, let's talk about, let's go there. And it's still happening, and so those are things that make us better artists because it makes us better people. So we're really grateful for all the good things that you do. So
Thank you for that, Renee. and
Thank you so much.
thank you everyone for watching. Come back Wednesday at 7:30, and I don't remember what we're doing on Wednesday. We're doing something brilliant on Wednesday at 7:30. Just come back and watch. Guys, I had my vaccine yesterday. I'm going to blame the memory loss on the vaccine. Don't remember. 7:30 Wednesday, 7:30 Thursday, 5 o'clock Friday. We will be live on the air, and you can see more of it. Thank you, Renee, for doing this. As you can see, my brain is totally checked out. So,
all good.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.